So how do you launch a successful business? Or the better question is, how do you actually have a roadmap to success when you launch a business and as you start to grow and scale? Well, welcome to the show today. I'm glad you could be here. That's exactly what we are going to be diving into. So with us today is Chris Michael Harris, or CMH. Now, he's a founder of Startup, an interactive online learning platform that teaches entrepreneurs how to take an idea or an existing business and actually turn it into a highly successful and profitable company. So having founded, bootstrapped, and scaled multiple startups to 7+ figures in his mid to late 20s, Chris excels in taking concepts from idea stage to traction and growth in extremely rapid succession. Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, man. I always want to just end after the bio. I'm just like, that's it. I can't, that's all I got. That's it.
I personally,
I'm not gonna top that.
I'd love to have one person that just drops the mic and then just walks off camera at that point.
Yeah, that's it.
And everybody would watch that episode too, because they're like, what is up with this 90-second episode right here? What's this all about?
That's so funny.
It would probably work too. Being a marketing guys, like it would probably work. People they'd go right to your website. What's going on? If this guy could just have a bio and that's all it takes, like what's going on?
Mic drop it. Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited to be here, man. I think there's a lot of cool things we can get into, and I can already tell there's some synergy here between our kind of viewpoints on things.
Yeah, well, we got work with a lot of people, especially on the new side, that are just getting businesses off the ground. And I like this idea, that this concept you have here. So like, give me some of the fundamentals. When you're trying to create like a business roadmap, what does that mean to you? What's that look like?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing, I think that there's just a lot of fundamental mistakes that people are making. And you and I talked about before we started recording here, just about our perception of how we run marketing. And it's all data driven. It's all numbers driven. And we can go even further back to what you're talking about, which is road mapping. So many people start a business, and the whole, the notorious one is the cook that says, I'm good at being a cook, I'm going to open a restaurant. And that's literally the extent of thought that goes into planning and prepping to start this restaurant. And they just think they build it and they will come. What we're seeing now, Ty, is the digital equivalence of that. I start an Instagram profile, I put entrepreneur in my bio, I built it, people will come and buy it. And the reality is it's just not the case. So we're very, very data driven and data oriented. A lot of the things that we did in that first startup venture that you referenced, we kind of did by accident, meaning getting out and gathering data from the market, taking that data, assessing that, building that into our efforts, building that into our website, using the language that those people use specifically, not words out of our own mouth. A lot of times what people want to do is they want to build a business that they want to build. They want to build something they think is cute and clever. They want to use their words because they know best, right? And the reality is we're making it harder than it has to be. It's really about regurgitating, finding a problem in the market, creating a viable solution. It could be as simple as a coffee sleeve, right? Simply is like a coffee sleeve, but then finding a way to communicate and amplify that message to enough people that resonate at a deep and meaningful level that they decide to do business with you over somebody else. So that's really the core of what we teach and how we teach people to do that. And then all the nuance and all the bolt-ons and the mechanisms and the strategies and the webinars and the sales funnels and all the various things that we do, the paid advertising campaigns, are really built upon that core premise. Now, before we get to other aspects of that, one of the biggest things we talk about, in addition to understanding the market, and that sounds so basic and rudimentary, and we can talk about how to actually do that as a science, and that's very, very impactful. But it's also analyzing what's the life that I have and what's the life that I want to have. I found, and many people do find, within 6 months of running a business, they're doing a lot of stuff they never were, and doing very few things they actually love to do that they thought they would be doing. And they end up building a business around their life, or rather the other way around, a life around their business versus a business around their life, right? So they become a prisoner. You leave a job to go work for a lunatic, and the lunatic is you, and you drive yourself crazy. So there's a lot that we do. There's a lot of forecasting that's necessary in terms of sitting down, running your numbers. We always tell people 6 to 12 months minimum of expenditures covered, unless you're going to go one of two routes, which typically is what we recommend regardless. Night and weekend warrior, meaning you're building your business at night. You're putting in 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours at night, or you're putting in 8 hours on the weekends doing your full-time job, so you're still putting food on the table. Or side hustler. Younger people like the side hustler route. I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to go Uber. I'm going to do Instacart. I'm going to take advantage of gig economy and work on my business full time. So there's a whole robust way of really mapping out, as you mentioned, what that business roadmap looks like. And we can get into any of those nuances or specifics, but it's very practical. It's not just, I have an inkling one day, and we see this. People get so frustrated and so fed up with their current situation, seeking greener pastures, they just jump into an entrepreneurial endeavor. And 6 months in, they find themselves blowing through their entire savings and going back to a job that they end up hating just as much.
It makes sense. And I understand the goal of a roadmap, because I think a lot of people do that. We just jump in and get started and then figure out as we go. And, what I found, to your point, things take twice as long and cost twice as much than we ever begin to anticipate. And I still now, an 8-figure business, still run it the same way. Whenever we are best guess of time, we still double, we still look at an expense, we still double it. And it's still closer to the doubling as even to our best guess. It's kind of a crazy.
Yeah. It's always good to have sunny day scenario and visions in mind, but I totally agree. You need to plan for both. You need to have, okay, let's plan for the best. Let's prepare for the worst. And I think oftentimes what you'll find is what you're talking about, the latter. It's going to take twice as long, cost twice as much. And that coincides with what I've experienced and teach as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're just optimistic, overly optimistic as entrepreneurs by default, I think.
And that's kind of who we are intrinsically, right? As entrepreneurs.
Yeah. It's our best strength. It's our greatest weakness sometimes.
100%.
Especially on this topic. But what about when you're building this thing? I understand the why. It makes a lot of sense. But what do you recommend? What kind of things go into this kind of roadmap?
Yeah. So I think the first is the viability of the market and the idea. And I think maybe some people are like, I know I want to do something. I have no idea what that would be. So I recommend to people is take 30 days or take 60 days and just observe things in your life. A lot of people will call it scratching your own itch. So if you know you want to do something, but don't know what it is you want to do, just start to observe things that are like, have a contrarian viewpoint of those things. It seems like this could be done more effectively or it could be done better. Oftentimes you'll find if that impacts 80% of people, you've got a viable market. Then it's more of an analyzing, okay, who's already doing this in the market? A lot of people see competition and guess what they do? They move on to the next idea. Oh, somebody's already doing that. Oh my goodness. Imagine if Netflix took that idea with Blockbuster, right? What they did is they found a different, but more modern iteration of a current idea. So there are, and moreover, you don't have to be that big. You could serve people in that subset of that group that are currently underserved because of the nature in which that iteration is currently serving people. So sometimes niches do lead to the riches, right? So you could find markets within markets where people are being underserved, right? So that's another thing to look for. So don't immediately think the competition equals bad. And oftentimes not being competition is actually worse, meaning no one's doing this because it's been tried and failed before. And your job is to figure that out.
Yeah, and I don't want you to lose your train of thought before you do. But, something I've recently heard that I really think is very applicable here is that what I've learned is that industries are not changed from the inside. They're changed from the outside, yes, meaning 100%. That we're all so close to the problems we're trying to solve that we don't see the bigger view. And, you look at an Uber and taxi of the world, taxi companies are trying to fix these minor things that their customers are unhappy about. It takes somebody from the outside to look at the whole model. And go, that's flawed. Let's come to a better alternative. So to your point, it's sometimes better to be in an industry with competition. They're all stuck in the hamster wheel and you're looking from the outside and see things they just absolutely do not see.
Yeah, 100%. More mature entrepreneurs have that viewpoint because younger entrepreneurs, they kind of view their business as an extension of themselves. It's like their first love. I always say it's like the first time it's like puppy love. You view it as an extension of yourself. Mature entrepreneurs kind of view it more as a commodity. It doesn't mean they're not passionate about what they're doing. It just means they view it as a commodity. It can be bought and sold and traded and what have you. Mature entrepreneurs look at a market like what you're talking about, a dinosaur industry. I love dinosaur blue collar industries because any level of disruption, I can cut through the noise because nobody's doing that, specifically on the marketing side. But then also too, huge acquisition play. If you can build something, it's going to take them more time, money, and resources to build what you've done to then to just pay you to go away. In fact, Waze never generated a freaking dollar and got acquired for billions of dollars by Google. Why? For the reason that I just said. So sometimes most times competition is a very, very, very good thing. You just have to figure out where you fit inside of that market. So 100% the case. And again, the young entrepreneurs don't see that. The next part is the effective planning aspect of it. It's looking objectively at your finances and saying, here's where I'm at. If I stopped, and Robert Kiyosaki has the best method in my view, as far as how to measure your wealth. How long could you sustain your current livelihood if you cut off your source of income right now? And some people, that's like maybe 3 days. That's not enough time because here's the deal. Like you said, it's going to cost you twice as much as you think, it take twice as long as you think, right? So if that's the case and you've got 3 days, you got to make this ish happen real fast. And that's not, first of all, you want to create urgency, not desperation in your build, period, end of story. You create desperation, now you got big problems. You're not going to make good decisions that way. So you're going to force something. You're not going to be able to go through the nuance of figuring out what actually is going to be a viable, scalable solution. you're basically going to make really bad, fight or flight type response decisions. That is not going to be, I've never seen anybody build a successful business that way. Occasionally you get lucky, but most times it's urgency. So it's putting yourself in an urgent situation, like 6 to 12 months, if at all possible. Having those side jobs that you maybe don't like, having, the night and weekend warrior situation that you don't like, but it's also keeping you accountable. It's keeping you urgent, moving towards what you're trying to move towards. And you can build out just a basic, you can use something like mint.com. You can use a basic Excel doc, but really figure out, here's what I'm thinking about charging for this product. Here's my current finances are. Here's how many units I have to sell. And what I do is over the course of 3 to 5 years, you can actually traject that transition. It's not a light switch type moment. You slowly transition out of a job and you slowly transition into running a business. The thing people underestimate always, they underestimate that this is a learning process. What you learned in school, most of it, what you do in your job, most of it will not translate into running your business. Now, there are some minor few exceptions, people that have a job in the industry they're looking to start a business in. And I always say, look at that like a paid internship. If you're in an industry right now and you want to start a business in that industry, oh my God, you're building connections, invaluable connections. You're getting the experience you need. You're going to understand the market and the product and the customers. All those things are going to be wildly beneficial when you make that transition. So you can make it faster. And so many people are like, okay, I haven't fully started my business. I'm not a business owner until I quit that job. And sometimes you need to, eventually you have to make that decision. But let's look at it as a slow transition, not a flip the light switch. Holy crap, I've got 48 hours to make it happen, or I'm going to be flat on my butt and not be able to pay my bills. That's not a situation you want to be in. So all of that. And then the last aspect of that is I want people to have at least 10. Some of the accelerator programs want you to do 50 to 100. I'm saying at least 10 deep dive conversations with potential people in your market, potential customers, prospective customers in your market, not mom, dad, brother, cousin, sister, people that actually want to buy what it is that you're thinking about selling. If you have to go out, and I did this with that first business, I went out in the downtown Athens, Georgia, right? I was a student there and I was interviewing people outside of the bars with a flip phone. I'm telling you, I wish I saw those videos. They were so pixelated and terrible, but we were interviewing people, asking them questions about their experience in that industry, their biggest challenge, what they wished that they had received, the service that had been rendered that wasn't rendered, the things they would do to improve it, what would have made them feel more comfortable, price points, all these various aspects of things that were super valuable. And these people had had a few drinks, so they were more willing to have engaging conversations. And we got crazy insights. And that's why, largely, part of the equation, we went from broke college kids to a $1 million company in less than 36 months when I was in my mid-20s. Is because we took the time. Now, all the other things I didn't do right. I didn't do the planning. I didn't make the transition. I quit my job abruptly, but I did one thing right. I really validated the market. I did it as a side hustle while I was in school. And we interviewed the crap out of people to make sure they knew what they wanted. And we collaborated with other people in that area to make sure we leverage their audience versus trying to build one on our own. You don't have time or the money to do that. You're not Coca-Cola. You can't spend $30 million on a Super Bowl commercial to get exposure. So you want to expose yourself to other collaborative partners that already have a built-in audience that you're providing mutual value exchange. So I know I covered a lot of ground right there, through a lot of information. Whatever you want to dig into or not dig into or move on or cover, I'm happy to.
No, I love every part of that. And actually, the last part that makes me think about an episode I saw, The Prophet. I love The Prophet. And, one of these guys had like an ice cream manufacturer, and they're huge now. From the son ended up taking over the running of it, but they had these flavors. They didn't know what to bring out and whatnot. And then guys like Mark's like, just go to the streets. They took him to the streets and just started asking people, right? And I mean, it was astonishing on how quickly people validated that or not. And I gotta be honest with you, I suck at that. Like even now in the business, I sometimes forget, and I'm getting better at just surveying and just asking the market what they're looking for. And then you got these fools that are out there deploying products and all this money and time into stuff that's never going to work. So they never even just surveyed the market. So like you said, just your willingness to just get out there and ask questions and learn more about the problems that people are experiencing and the solutions that they're looking for. Like it does so much of the heavy lifting. If you're willing to do that one thing, a lot of people aren't, then you're taking the steps to be able to have a greater probability of success right away.
It's funny you say that about you yourself. Not some people, and this is usually people that I work with one-on-one client basis. Usually they come to me and they're like, "Hey, we kind of reached a 7-8 figure mark. We're trying to scale beyond that. Having a little bit of trouble with the marketing aspect." Okay, Usually I think it's the technical aspect. Usually I think it's, well, I don't know how to run ads. I'm not sure what strategy to deploy with the ads, or if I need a webinar, if I need, what kind of sales funnel I need. Almost 100 times out of 100, comes down to what got them there isn't what's going to get them to the next space of where they're trying to go. And almost always I make them do an insight survey, which is what we're talking about. I just kind of mechanized it. When they're like, oh, I don't want to do a survey. I've been doing this for 10 years. I know my people. I know this. We run that survey, and every single time without fail, they come back jaws on the floor. I cannot believe, because at the end of the day, the market changes a little bit. Things shift, trends, demographics, like all these things are evolving, new markets or new products in the market. So all these things change and evolve, but we also start to, when we're serving customers, we start to broadly assume that those customers are how the market is at large. And usually, and this was an example, COVID related, one of my clients was assuming that the broader market, his customers, the people that he was serving, oh, my area is not concerned about COVID. Well, sure. What we found, the insight survey showed us, was that your customers are not, and that's the reason they're showing up. But guess who was concerned about it? The people that weren't showing up, the broader market. So we were including language in the sales messaging about what they were doing for COVID related issues. So they was having a growth and marketing problem because that was an assumption that was a wrongful assumption. So I'm a big proponent of at least once a year running those insight surveys. It's a great way to get people re-engaged anyways, meaning people on your email list. And then immediately you're providing them with some kind of a solution, a welcome back campaign, or something you're doing to get them back into becoming customers. So it's a viable, everybody loves to give their advice and feedback because people love me, myself, and I. So it's a great way to get people re-engaged anyways and give you the insights to stay on top of what maybe you knew years ago, but you just need to get refreshed on. So I'm a huge fan of doing it periodically.
Yeah, and even polls are becoming so easy to do on social channels. Even if you do it question by question, it's just the tech makes it so easy to be able to do it. Well, what about an excellent roadmap? I mean, and the roadmaps you help businesses create, what do you think really makes a really good, excellent, exceptional roadmap?
I think considerations for all things. I think people, and that's one of the big things people have commented. I'm assuming you saw that video that I did on that, and there was a download and stuff like that, and we've gotten really good response off of that. So I think the big thing is that there's all things in consideration. It's faith, family, finance, and then the business, right? So it's like you can't just go into a business and say, I'm willing to sacrifice everything for this business. Now, don't get it twisted. It requires that kind of commitment. This is not a dip a toe in the pool scenario here. Starting a business requires every ounce of you, but you need to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success. You're not considering putting your faith first, right? You're not considering having relationships with your family and friends, right? And putting all that on the back burner and being like, well, all the things are what comprise who you are and fill you in different areas. So I think the biggest mistake that I see is everybody just says, I will sacrifice everything. So they have a destination mindset. I'll be happy when, I'll be successful when. And the bottom line is that the journey is what the focus needs to be. How do I equip myself for this journey that will be long and arduous with the things that I need? They're going to bring out the best of me. Whether that's coaches, friends, family, mentors, you name it, resources, the online teachings, the courses like I have, right? All of those things need to comprise, needs to be, everybody focuses on the destination, and we're largely a destination society. And I call us a microwave society. We kind of just want things tomorrow because that's just, TikTok scrolling. Like we just get it now, instant gratification. And this journey is the opposite of that. So society has kind of conditioned us to be the opposite of what this game actually entails. So really embellish and embrace the journey. And that includes every facet of not only who you are, but the things that make you thrive. And that's the biggest mistake that I see. Everybody comes to me with their business idea and they never, ever talk about, these are the things that make me happy. These are the things that make me excited. These are the things that make me feel whole. These are the things that give me joy. Like those are not discussions that we have. And that includes some lifestyle things that many people are just thinking that they're just going to either sacrifice for a short term, and then they're surprised or disappointed when that doesn't happen, when it does take 3 years to even break even. Hopefully not. But all those things never seem to be taken into consideration. That's the biggest mistake that I see.
Yeah, it's very true. And I got to tell you, one of the best lessons I've learned that, and applied is setting boundaries. And the
Yes.
first company I ever owned was a mortgage company, right? And I got into owning a business because my dad always worked. God bless him. He worked hard for my family, right? And I always said,
Right.
I want to be there for my kids' soccer games and such. So I'm going to start a business, right? But then I own a mortgage company. I was working all the time, evenings, weekends, because that's when people need mortgages to shop for homes. And then I learned from that experience, I don't want to do this. I want to have a life with my family. So I need a 9-to-5 type of business where people don't need me on weekends, and started setting boundaries of what I was willing to sacrifice. What I found, to your point, is that it's equally as important to have the plan to set the boundaries of what you're willing to sacrifice to get it than the actual goal. Like setting the goal is worthless if you don't set the boundaries, because like you said, otherwise it's a free for all and people find themselves really, really overwhelmed. And they end up hating entrepreneurship because they're overworked. They never set boundaries for themselves.
Yeah, no, totally. There's an interesting story that I just read from John Bevere. He's a pastor, and whether you're a Christian or not, I think this will ring true. But he was talking about this basketball coach who had coached. I think it was 19 years. Don't quote me specifically, but I think 19 years he was this high school basketball coach, and that was a pretty acclaimed program. And the goal was state championship, right? 19 years, and he hadn't really sniffed state championship. I think they gotten close a few times, but had never gotten to that mountaintop, right? So he felt, I don't know, I guess just conviction or just had one of like a God interceding kind of moment or whatever, that to take 90 minutes of their practice time, that's limited in high school. You've got like a small window for practice every day. And he was trying to like figure out new ways to like get more into the practice, right? So he felt like that God was telling him to spend 45 minutes, half of the practice in communion with the team, doing Bible studies, right? It's like, and the team was like, whoa, like, why would we do? That's crazy. Like, that's the opposite of what we should be doing, right? We should figure out how to maximize this time and fit more into it and stuff like that. They did it though. They bought in. They won back-to-back state championships. So not only have they gone 20 years now winning one, 19, 20 years, they then won back-to-back. The point of the story is this, and I think this rings true regardless, is that sometimes we can find ourselves, and we've kind of become what they call a hustle porn, society to a large degree, especially with entrepreneurship. And by no means is this trying to be like a slick way of saying work smart, not hard. I do think there's merit to that. And I don't want to dismiss hard work because it is important. But sometimes what I feel like is the blinders go up because we get so like narrowly focused on just that hustle aspect and not the let's have a balance of focusing on what's strategy before we just execute. And I think it's kind of one of those things where it's like love and hate can't exist at the same time. They're just because they just can't. Like you can't feel hate at the same time you feel love. It's just juxtaposed and against one another. It's impossible. I think sometimes it's strategy and execution, strategizing time and execution are much the same. When you're executing and you've got the blinders up, it's really hard to think methodically about what strategy you should be deploying. It's really hard to be researching about other people are doing in the industry. So you're not trying and failing what somebody else has already done. People tell me all the time, and I'll say, hey, spend 10 minutes a day reading books from people in your space about what you're trying to work on. Oh, I don't have 10. Dude, you don't have time not to. These people, like Tony Robbins of the world, have literally left breadcrumbs of success riddled throughout these books. And largely, you don't make money selling books. You just don't. I mean, some people do it for the exposure and this and that, but largely it's a pay it back kind of situation. What more valuable time could you spend than 10 minutes reading the success from the people that you want to be like? That to me, that logic, it just doesn't compute. And I think it's because we've gotten so fixated on this like hustle, which is important. But I would rather see somebody really take time to sharpen that axe, really make sure that they're investing their time, having counterbalance. I don't believe in balance. I believe in counterbalance to make sure that when you do swing, you're not wasting a bunch of time and money. And I see that so often in entrepreneurship. We prepare for everything else. We go to school to be a brain surgeon. We spend years, being under somebody's understudy. We get entrepreneurship and all of a sudden we're going to wing it. We're not going to spend money on a coach. We spend $150,000 on an education for a piece of paper. We're not going to pay a coach $2,000 a month to go create endless potential generational wealth. That just doesn't compute for me. I don't understand that. So there has to be more of a strategic approach. And I guess if anybody takes anything from this requires strategy. It just does. It requires strategy and then 100% execution. But you will lose that 100% commitment to execution if you're not continuing to strategize and refine your approach. If you fail 10 times in a row, yeah, you're going to figure things out. But man, I'm telling you what, we're making it harder than it has to be. And I think that's why the failure rate is what it is in entrepreneurship, which is basically 8 out of 10 over the course of a decade. That's substantially way higher than it should be. We need these businesses thriving. We need people in the world bringing new disruption, innovation to the market, because like you said, innovation comes from the outside, not from the inside. Don't expect the Amazons of the world to innovate. We challenge that through innovation on the outside. And I think we're really missing that as a society right now.
Yeah, and to your point, even you mentioned sharpening the axe, and that's, one of Abe Lincoln's, I think, most famous quotes. If I had an hour to chop down a tree, I'd spend 45 minutes sharpening the axe.
Right.
So I love that. And I also agree. I think I thrive in business because I'm obsessed with learning, and things go wrong. And I hired the wrong person once, read 5 players on, books on hiring A players, never had that problem again. So
there you go.
If you're willing to learn, it's just astonishing what you can do. But speaking of learning throughout the process, there's also a famous quote out there that's something like, no plan withstands the first contact with an enemy.
Yeah.
Like Mike Tyson, everybody has a plan.
So you get punched in the mouth. Yeah.
Right. Mouth, whatever it may be. So same thing is that you develop a plan. And I even had entrepreneurs come to me and say, why can't I just get money based on my business plan or what I think will happen? I'm like, because none of that is going to happen. That, and I did that. So when you come through and you built a really good research plan, what do you do when things are going awry? Nothing in that plan, or a large part, or feels like a large part of that plan, isn't working as you anticipated. How do you modify?
I'm so glad you bring this up, Ty. So I have a mechanism that I call leader. I say be a leader, LITR. It's an acronym, obviously. So it's learn, implement, test, and repeat. Here's how that works and why that works, and here's why I've had to use it. I was the implement type, right? I was just to get out there, jump off the cliff, and figure out how to build a plan on the way down. That was who I was. And you get burned. You get burned when you do that. You'll make some significant, some people just don't get their ass started, and they need that kick in the butt to just jump, right? But I was the other way. So for me, that mechanism was like, learn first, not just arbitrary random information. This isn't trivia night. Learn what you're intending, what you've identified to be the thing that is the thing. Right. I love the book, The One Thing by Gary Keller. What is the one thing that's going to make the most difference right now? We are married to the hour for pay model because that's what we've been conditioned to believe. That's what we've been conditioned to, how we've been conditioned to operate, school and job. So we have to divorce our taskmaster. Then we're figuring out what's the number one thing? What's the number one focus? If I could do nothing but one thing today, what would it be that's going to make the biggest impact? Then what I'm going to do is I'm not just going to jump and be like, well, let's figure it out. Oh, that didn't work. I'm quitting. I'm going to go back to trying something else. No, because then you're scattered. You're all over the place. What are the best resources I have to learn this one thing over the course of the next quarter? Let's say you're going to theme out your quarter. Then I'm going to crush this. My hiring, like you said, my hiring is terrible. And it's preventing me from growing beyond where we are right now. So I'm going to first learn on that. As I'm learning, I'm going to implement the things that I'm learning. Actionable learning. Huge fan of that. Right. Then huge component, you said, do I know it's working? How are you testing that? Because some people, they do something once and then that's where it ends. No, you need to test and see, is this actually working? Now there's a million different ways. Obviously that's going to be a case by case basis, but you need to be testing, is this working? And how much do I need to augment it? Because everything is iterative in entrepreneurship, right? You're never going to have the full perfect thing right out of the gates, but you need to learn what you need to learn for the next iteration and then repeat that process. If you're doing those in that order, LITR, constantly, iteratively going, what's the next one thing? What's the next one thing? What's the next one thing? You will keep yourself out of trouble. Now, the opposite of what I said, I'm the implementer, right? I just implemented, I jump in. I don't want to take time to learn. I don't have time for that, right? That was my attitude. The opposite side is the professional learners. They're stuck on L. They're learning random information. You could ask them, they know stuff about entrepreneurship more than I do, theoretically, on their book knowledge. Like you said, they haven't been punched in the mouth yet. I've been punched in the mouth a lot because I just jumped in. But there is that opposite side. And I call them professional learners. I don't care how much you know about entrepreneurship. Until you make money, until you're making money, you got a hobby, you don't have a business. So your butt needs to say, okay, the one thing, I'm learning what I need, but only what I need to get that first iteration off the ground, and I'm implementing, and then I'm testing, and I'm going through an iterative process. If you're not doing that and continuing that cycle, and then figuring out ways to systematize, delegate, and or automate that process, you're missing out, because you can't do everything, as you're going to find out very quickly. You're building a machine. It's like you're building a car from scratch. You put that lug nut on there, you don't got to worry about the wheel anymore if you did it right. You shouldn't have to, because eventually you're going to have all these components you're trying to hold together, and you yourself, it's not possible for you to do it. So you stay stuck. You don't keep growing. Your job, and this is, I like the visual force, your job is eventually be the driver, because the lug nut matters. It does matter. But guess what? The lug nut doesn't matter if nobody's driving the dang car. You're going to end up in a ditch or the wrong place or not driving at all. So your goal, and a lot of people have resistance to this. They're like, but it's so important, this thing I'm doing. I'm like, yeah, it's a lug nut. It's a lug nut in the process, right? It's a timing belt in the process. It matters a lot. And right now it might be the thing you're building, but ultimately your goal is to be in the driver's seat. And until you're in the driver's seat, that's the most valuable role. And until somebody is, your company's not going where it needs to be, not as fast as it could. So I don't know if that metaphor helps people. That really helped me like kind of break that resistance to being like, oh, but I have to do all the things because no one can do it as good as I can. And that's, people will find themselves in that position really, really quickly.
Chris, great stuff today. I wish I had a lot more time to dive in. But everybody that wants to learn more about developing the right roadmap, getting a startup launched, and being able to successfully scale 7-8 figures and beyond, where can they go?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things you can do. The first is we have a quiz you can go to. So if you go to heycmh.com, there's a quiz of what type of business you should start if you're brand new to that process.
What's that site again?
What's that?
Sorry. What's that site again?
Yeah, Hey CMH. So like hey, like hello, not hey for like, I guess people said they were saying hey like horses. Hey like hello, cmh.com is the website. So we've got a couple different resources there for you. The one is what type of business should you start? We actually have the business roadmap there as well if you want to go through and work through that. And then one of our more popular resources actually lately is we just started a free class. It's about 35 minutes long, and it's going to teach you how to actually make money selling online without being super cringe. A lot of people are like, I want to sell online, but people sound so gimmicky and hokey and stuff like that. So we've built out a class for people to understand how you can do that, both in a methodical, affordable way using data and proven mechanisms, not just getting online and trying stuff and sounding really hokey in the process. So all of that is at heycmh.com. You can check that out. And on social media, keeping it simple, it's at heycmh as well. If it ain't heycmh, it's not me.
Chris, thanks for coming on today.
I enjoyed it, man. This was great.
Yeah, same here. I enjoyed it as well. So listen, if you're watching this, man, this is it. I mean, there's so many, as Chris pointed out, 8 out of 10 businesses fail. The statistics are all over the board, depending on the time frame that you're looking at. But everything is, one thing's consistent. Most businesses fail. And a lot of businesses fail because of reasons Chris just clearly outlined of mistakes that entrepreneurs make. They just don't have a roadmap. They don't have a clear vision and direction of where they're heading. They haven't done the proper market research that they even need to do to see if they have a niche, to see if they can sell what they want to sell. There's just so many things that can go wrong. And Chris just started to go into a lot of things that actually can take you down the wrong road. But if you have the right roadmap, that's really the key to success, of knowing where you're going, of putting together the proper knowledge and research you need to not just launch the business, but successfully help it grow into 6, 7, 8 figures and beyond. So a couple things to do. Go right now to heycmh.com. CMH is short for Chris Michael Harris, right? So heycmh, like heycmh.com. And right here, a lot of cool stuff you could do. Right away, you can come in and do a quiz to be able to see what's going on, like to be able to get yourself started down the road of developing the right roadmap. Chris has got his YouTube channel. He's got a podcast. His blog is, there's more information here than you can probably find on 100 sites online to how to successfully launch a business and scale it and grow it. So make sure you go to heycmh.com. You're going to see Chris's handsome face here, glassesless, right here on the page, right beside the cool button that says get started. You got to check this thing out. Ton of good stuff here, and everything you need to be able to launch a business, successfully develop your roadmap. It's all right here. So make sure you visit heycmh.com today to get started on your roadmap to success. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.